So here's a quick review of how to find domain and range when you're looking at the graph. So I'm going to pick two colors. I'm going to do my domain, it will be in purple, and my range will be in green. And just a reminder, when we draw the lines for domain and range, the domain gets up and down lines, which can kind of seem backwards, and the range gets the side-to-side lines. So when we're looking at this graph over here, and there's supposed to be little arrows on the end here, I'm going to take my domain colored pencil, and you're welcome to use colored pencils when you need to, and I'm going to draw right at the ends here, and then I'm going to switch over. So something that I remember from our notes, something that you should remember, is that when you have arrows on either ends, these all get infinity or negative infinity. If it's on the left or at the bottom, you get a negative infinity. If it's on the right or at the top, you get a positive infinity. So back to domain, we see here on the left we have an arrow, so that's a negative infinity. And on the right we have an arrow, so that's a positive infinity. The range down at the bottom here, there's an arrow, negative infinity. And there's an arrow at the top, so positive infinity. We should also remember that when we use the arrows, we have arrows where we're using infinity, we're going to give our domain and range using brackets, or round brackets. So our domain is going to go from negative infinity to infinity, round brackets, and our range is going to go from negative infinity to infinity with round brackets. I'm going to keep with the same colors, so I'm going to use purple for our range. I'm going to draw up and down. So I'm making sure I draw the lines that they hit along the x-axis there, a little bit off. I'm going to draw those range lines in so they hit the y-axis. And I'm going to go back and look. Well, the first number here on the left is at 1. And this number over here is at 1, 2, 3. Then reading from bottom to top, I'm at negative 1, 2, 3, 4. And I go up to negative 2. So that means the domain goes from 1 to 3, and the range goes from negative 2 to negative 4. I have to decide what brackets I want to use. Well, it's not an open hole, and it's not infinity, so I can use square brackets. One more example from your worksheet. Domain, there's a range. Lowest number is 0. Highest number is infinity. Lowest number is 0 again. Highest number is infinity. So my domain goes from 0 to infinity, and the range goes from 0 to infinity. I have an open hole and an arrow. Open hole and an arrow. And so there's my domain and range. So as a summary,
Had a kid on his test.
So summary, if we have an open hole or arrows, they could be up, they could be down, we're going to use round brackets. If you have a closed hole or the graph just touches a point, then you're going to use the square brackets. It's probably easier to remember when to use round brackets, and then everything else gets a square bracket. And if you're ending up using the arrows, we get the negative infinity and the positive infinity.